moving on to our next panel, which is centered around what can Indian independent PR firms do to cut the clutter. Let me invite our speakers for this panel. Aniruddha Bhagwat, CEO and co-founder Ideosphere. Girish Balachandran, founder On Purpose. Komal Lath, founder or chief hustler as she calls herself, Tute Consult. Rishi, Seth, founder and CEO Evoc. Tejal, Daftary, founder Alphabet Media. Please, Girish, please come on. Allow me to also welcome the moderator for this session, Srishty Chawla, co-founder OneSource.
Good morning, everyone. It's such a lovely Saturday, so I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you, Amit and team. So, is this okay? No. Thanks, Amit and team, for having us here. I think it's a great place to be. Hi, Aniruddha. Okay. So, like I said, very happy to be here. In fact, very, very little bit of funny in my head, a little bit of awe, because I've actually worked with several people here, including Rishi, Madan sir, Hemant, and it's just also a little bit of pride because being the youngest in the room, right? So it just calls for just a little bit of, I'm here, so thank you. So thank you even more, Amit, for that. I think on breaking the clutter for Indian independent firms, I think it's very important, and several pieces that were discussed in the previous panel. Also, breaking the clutter, I think it's more important to sort of organize the clutter, bring method to madness, bringing structure, setting the benchmarks, right? So I'm just going to throw a question open to the panel here. Very cliched, but collaboration over competition, right? So thoughts on whether that's the way to go, and if yes, which I'm hoping it will be, then what are some of the strategies, or how can we sort of deploy the whole process or mindset of collaboration over competition to break or organize the clutter, like I said. Aniruddha, if you would like to start.
So, thanks for the question. It's a very interesting question because I think we need to do both. And we find ourselves a lot in our own industry being competitors with each other and also collaborators with each other. I think that's healthy, number one. One of the things that, to break the clutter, that I feel we need to do is that if we are going to turn into problem solvers through communication, you're not going to be able to solve every problem. And for us, each of us here, we know the problems that we can solve. And we also know that we've made mistakes trying to solve problems we cannot solve, and made those mistakes. And through that experience of, at times, burning our own fingers, we've realized that it's better to collaborate with the right type of teams rather than trying to take risks on behalf of the client's money. And that really affects our reputation more than anything else. So I think collaboration is also a way to be able to provide a single window solution for a customer, and really admit that none of us in this room are great at everything. And that's what, if you have that realization, I think you can do some really good things.
All right, thank you for that. So I think just taking from that, we're not good at everything, which is true. Humans, right? We're not good at everything. We don't like to admit it, yes, but we're not. So Girish, what are your thoughts on that? The things that, let's say, we're not good at, how can we go about it?
I think that's a choice all of us have to make. My view is that you choose to do what you're passionate about, and you do it well because there's enough space in this industry for all these opportunities. So rather than going after the biggest market opportunity, I would say choose the opportunity that makes sense to you, that speaks to you, and then become really good at it. And then there's enough market for that. And I think we've also had the good fortune to approach other agencies like Ideosphere, like The Practice, to collaborate on pitches, on opportunities where we felt that maybe we were not good enough or strong enough, and together we might be stronger. We're still trying to figure it out, which is get the model right. But I think if you do what you're really good at and become sort of known for that, hopefully you'll find others who are good at other things, and then you can create these collaborations that make sense for clients.
All right. So I think, Tejal, from here, I would just like to understand from you, have you been part of any such collaborations? And if yes, could you just elaborate a little bit on those during the years that you've worked, run Alphabet?
Unfortunately, no. I've not been part of the collaborations as yet. But I think Aniruddha and me have been talking for the longest time to collaborate. I think it's been over 5 years. We've had conversations, but like we're just figuring out a model, and I just this whole time is just going and figuring out how to take it forward. But I truly believe it's the era of collaborations. I think we've all come together to discuss that, to figure how can we together work in a better way. And we've seen over the past 2 years, we've seen collaborations happening also on the client side. I mean, just to sort of deviate a little bit, I think the post-COVID era, a lot of brands, we've understood that customer acquisitions have become expensive. And one of the ways they've been approaching as part of the overall communication is to collaborate. And we've been seeing successful campaigns coming out of it. So I'm sure if they can do it, then why not us? And I truly believe it's not happened as yet, but that's something I'm eagerly looking forward to.
Thank you, and I hope that this becomes a success for you and Aniruddha and further with more people as well. On the subject of collaboration, and I would just sort of bring in a little bit of integration, because we're seeing communication teams now diversify into people from varied backgrounds, such as digital marketing and corporate communication and creatives being sort of taken care of within one team, right? So, Rishi, what are your thoughts on collaboration from that perspective, from a brand side, from a client side, when there are teams who are sort of expecting one agency, whether it's PR or digital, to sort of help them integrate services? What are your thoughts on how we can take that?
Yes, so my thinking is, it is the responsibility of the brand and all of their agency partners to choose one single agency to lead the entire communications strategy and mandate, and other agencies or partners can be brought under them. I feel for us, for example, if we are involved in setting an integrated communications program or designing it, we would like to have or say in the strategy, overall the approach, and what is the narrative, what is the messaging. And then, we create a brief, even if, for example, if we don't have the in-house capabilities for, let's say, digital or even say digital filmmaking, can we create the narrative or the script for the film that the brand wants to say? Because I think that cohesiveness of the entire program's narrative, messaging, strategy has to be led by one single agency. It should not be, a free for all, because typically in a scenario where multiple agencies are collaborating with a brand, what happens is, everybody wants to lead the mandate, and I think sometimes it's probably better for the brand to work out who has the best strategic capabilities in terms of setting the agenda, setting the narrative, setting the messaging, and then let them lead the entire campaign, and let them work with the other agency partners. That's my thought.
All right, so basically getting one agency or company to sort of be the hub, and everyone sort of can be the spokes around the model. And I think that's actually the true essence of collaboration, and that's one way to go about it, for sure. Any other thoughts, Aniruddha, Girish?
So I think one of the things when we speak about collaboration that we've been doing is that when it comes to partners, I think it's not about, I don't like being opportunistic in a way that a requirement has come, and today there is a requirement for great development communications, so let me call Girish. This is not how it works. I think the preparation for collaboration happens much before the opportunity. And for us, what we've been doing is we have a team which actually only scouts out partners. We have a platform which is allowing us to put all those partners there. If I'm not wrong, we must be having 70, 80 partners that are already there, which are being evaluated and not that we are anyone to evaluate, but evaluate it on what their strengths are. And so when we get any type of requirement from the market, our teams are actually going into that partner ecosystem and being able to figure out. A lot of preparation for great collaboration is going to happen now for mandates that we're going to get next year, and which is why Tejal, it's going to take some time, but it's going to happen. But yeah, that's what it's about. It's about that preparation. It's not about just doing it when the opportunity arises.
So sustained relationships and sustained collaboration. Hi, Komal. Welcome.
My apologies.
That's okay. Tejal, you want to do?
I also feel, one of the things I strongly believe in is to move really into the specialist sort of a zone, because eventually, it's the era, again, we are going to be entering into where the demand will be of talent, knowledge, and hence the rise in specialists agencies. When we enter into this phase more deeply, I think that's where stronger collaborations will happen, because we will need specialists tying with specialists. And I feel that should truly be the need of the hour, because that's how we will be able to take that stage in the board meeting that we were talking about. That's how we'll be able to invest more time in what we are particularly good at, because like we rightly said, we can't be good at everything. So the more we dive into the specialist era, I think more is going to be the time to get into better collaborations and deeper collaboration space. I strongly believe in that.
Thank you, Tejal. So specialists over generalists for collaboration. Once again, hi, Komal. Welcome. Okay, so I think we were just having a conversation about how part of breaking the clutter, organizing the clutter, is to collaborate, choosing collaboration over competition. And I think all of us had thoughts on it. So we would love to hear yours.
Thank you, and hi, everybody. So I did hear in when everybody was talking, and I'm completely in sync with saying that collaboration is something that's needed over competition. We've all collaborated in some way, and completely echo your thoughts, Tejal, that it is about a culture where you bring in the speciality. But I think with that, there's a lot of upskill required with being nimble-footed, with being able to understand where your thing is. It's not about scale up anymore, it's going to be about step up. So I think that would be the line I would say, that it's okay to define how much you want to grow. Growth is not necessarily P&L. The growth is about understanding this is what my specialty is. This is the juice that I get it in. And therefore you collaborate instead of overhiring and then, that entire churn of HR issues, etc. coming up. So I think being nimble-footed and being more agile in thinking, cutting through the clutter would be one of the key differentiators there.
Thank you, Komal. Thank you, everyone. I think just sort of taking from what Tejal said, specialists over generalists. So I think for the longest time, we've seen PR firms, communication firms doing a lot. If we see something like an Ad Factors or bigger firms, which are also Indian independent firms, there are specialist verticals within those bigger pieces. But as new age firms are coming up, whether it's integrated, whether it's specialized, when it comes to scaling up, right, how can we, is specialist the way to go, or would we say that we could still focus on a generalist approach of growth? Tejal, would you love to take that?
I'm just going to repeat it. I feel specialist is a way to grow, because clearly, I'll give an example of Alphabet Media. Our sectors are very defined. We are predominantly into lifestyle, homegrown brands, conscious brands. I personally love doing PR for brands that are more conscious, homegrown, and I do brands that I really enjoy. And we are not into certain sectors, and it's a clear bifurcation, because when I know that my passion is in this and I can give my all in a particular sector, I rather invest in that sector. Is that a level? Is that an issue of scale growth? Probably yes, probably no. I, as an individual, or me as Alphabet as a company, is a lot into delivering their best. And I feel if we deliver the best, I think the opportunities are just there. So I really don't see it as a hurdle.
All right, Komal, what do you think? How does Tute operate in that sense?
Thanks. I heard Tejal, but I have a slightly different point of view. I feel that being specialist, yes, but not in a particular sector. I think a brief yet from a different sector excites us. It's like that adrenaline that you get. You suddenly have an energy company to deal with. You have a construction company to deal with. But in the morning, you're selling hair oil. By evening, you're going to hospitality and energy. So I think the spectrum of that is what excites us at Tute. We take it on as a challenge that, hey, we don't know this. What can we do better? How do I get to make this category sexy if it's coals, right? That's the mindset. I think for us, specializing would be more from a skill set. Like perhaps we don't have the skill set right now to do performance marketing. Too technical, we'll get there. Maybe do we want to collaborate and do it? Yes. That's the way we'd look at it. So I think from us, specialists would mean that we'd like to take communication as a vertical, we'll take integrated as a vertical, but do we have the specialization to do an end-to-end event in-house? Maybe not. But do we have the know-how of how to do it? Yes. So I think my lens of looking at it is slightly different. Specialist, yes, but in 3 or 4 verticals, not necessarily from a client-centric point of view, but a skill set point of view.
So specialization in terms of sector, in terms of skill sets. Rishi, what are your thoughts?
First of all, I think specialization versus generalization is first and foremost the founders or the management team's choice. Both are strategic choices and both have, trade-offs, pros and cons in both respects. Of course, we know I think some of the obvious points with specialization is you are willingly and voluntarily limiting your addressable market to a specific niche, whereas if you stay generalist, even though the market is wide open, but you still have to compete with a lot of other firms who may or may not be specialized. So that's ultimately a strategic choice for the founders. Plus, if you are a smaller agency like we are, as Vineet mentioned in the previous session, a lot of these choices are also influenced by the team members. So, for example, I might have team members who come to me and say that we want to specialize in, let's say, performance marketing, for example, or in film production. Or we want to even going to a different sector. For example, we don't have any luxury clients, so they might say that we want to work with a luxury client. So those kind of choices, ultimately, of course, it lies entirely upon the founders or the senior management team. But in smaller agencies, it is also influenced by the team members. Second to your question about which way to go, whether sector-wise or specific skill-wise, again, I think when we start our agency or when we've been in the business for a while, we know what our strengths are, and sometimes you make a choice right at the beginning of your journey, like probably Girish did, to really have a very defined focus for the organization, but other times you tend to realize you dip your fingers in different types of either capabilities or sectors, and you realize that you're really good at something and others are not. You're not really good at it. So you can choose to specialize in what you feel is your core capability and just keep on building those competencies into something which really sets you apart from the competition.
Thank you, Rishi. I think that definitely makes sense. Girish, from an on-purpose perspective, right, you've definitely gone the specialized route in terms of the space in which you've chosen to operate, but maybe not in terms of the skill sets. So how does that work for you?
So I'm going to quote from a book that I read almost 10 years ago and has stayed with me. It's called The Pitch Manifesto. If you can get your hands on it, it changed the way I look at sort of positioning, consultancies and what we offer. And I can't remember the name of the author, but he says, to be a company that wins, you have to be selective. Choose an area of expertise that you can claim because the world is drowning in undifferentiated businesses. And what clients are willing to pay for is not personality or price, but it is differentiation in expertise. That's what clients are willing to pay for. And that sort of stayed with me for a long time. And he says, be selective, choose an area of expertise that you can be good at, and then you communicate that claim to expertise again and again and again so that you get associated with that one sort of specialism. Now, I've also been asked, as we grow, have we found the need to sort of dilute that, to be able to expand, to be able to grow? I think we're in a very privileged place in India because the market is growing, and of course, like I said, there is enough for everyone as long as you are passionate about what you're doing. And if you're passionate about what you're doing, there is enough market available for you to do what you want to do. So far, we've only found ourselves going deeper into our area of specialization and developing our capabilities in them rather than having the need to sort of expand out of the sector.
So India land of 1.3 billion and you choose to go the differentiation route, and that's very obviously working for you. That's actually great. Aniruddha, what are your thoughts on how Ideosphere wants to sort of break the clutter via specialization or generalization?
I have no idea. I'll tell you why.
That's fair.
No, I'll tell you why I said that. Because it's very easy to choose which side you want to be on when things are good. Okay? When your markets are bad, you will cheat with yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? So hence I don't make a commitment because I have people sitting here.
You're best actually.
But yeah, I'll tell you what I look at. Generalist, specialist to scale, I don't get it because I'm going to find myself cheating on either side when based on the market. What I do believe is that our work at Ideosphere has been on how do we scale process. How do we pick the spots that we are really good at and build very strong processes around it where I can input any industry, any people, any skill set and get the same outcome for my customer. I think we are in a service industry and we don't talk about process enough. We don't talk about automating process. We don't talk about productizing it. We don't talk about how we are going to do it. Because if we are unable to get and continue to maximize the outcome out of the same 5-6 member team that we have because of process, technology, and methodologies on top, we're not going to grow. And then this question of generalists and specialists is kind of a moot point because you're only going to grow to a certain level and then some advisor is going to tell you don't be a generalist anymore or don't be a specialist anymore. Or something like COVID will happen and you will cheat on yourself. So that's why I don't know that question, but I think scale is going to be the secrets in the process, not in which direction that you choose.
Fair enough. And sure.
Just to sort of answer, I mean, I feel, especially in the case of boutique agencies, and I mean, at least we are a boutique agency, the good thing with what we have is we're living in a population, we have talent. I know we're HR, I do understand that talent is a crunch and it's always been an issue, but I think we're living in a country that has immense talent. So I feel as an agency, while we're not generalists, if we can be specialists in specific sectors, I'm sure we have enough verticals that we can well define and we can scale up in those verticals. So if we narrow it down and if we have those verticals, and if we dive deep in those verticals, I think that sort of answers the question to scale up and to having knowledge in specific sectors.
May I add to that, please?
Yes, please.
Okay. So while we don't look at disciplines or sectors, I think what we've done well and what all of us can, I think we do that anyways. But once we are able to solve a specific problem, let's say the problems of, we had an organization once who said that, look, we are getting a lot of resumes that come to us, we want to do employer branding, but all the resumes are shit and we need to improve our quality of intake. So how do we communicate outside to get the right people to come to us and use that, not communication, not only as an attractor, but as a deterrent? We fixed this problem. It was a hard problem. We were able to get some outcome out of it. So what I think scale could be is you take that solution and now you try to chase all the other problems around in the industry saying, I have this solution. And I try to understand which are the companies that are going to also need this solution. So maybe that's also a way, and Tejal, thanks for bringing that up, is that once you're able to solve a specific problem with communications, I think using that to be able to scale and allow more people to be able to use that solution is also a way for scaling us.
So a yin and yang sort of a situation where we have generalists within specialists and specialists within generalists, I think, could be one way of definitely breaking the clutter as far as Indian independent communication firms are concerned. I think on that note, I'll just 13 or 14 minutes to go. We can just have one last conversation before I will open the floor for the audience, because we would love thoughts here. In terms of, Aniruddha, you mentioned processes, right? Scaling up with processes. As far as global firms are concerned, because we're speaking Indian independent, we will have to look at the flip side of the coin, which is the global firms. Have corporatized processes and deeper pockets where they can sort of deploy help in terms of process consulting. For that matter, not just processes, talent also, right? Because talent is, as we discussed, I think across every panel, talent is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. What can we do to break the clutter across scaling up using creative talent retention and acquisition strategies or process deployment strategies when it comes to competing with, let's say, the global firms? Because like I said, they have deeper pockets, they can spend more money, do more offsites, give more gifts, say what you will, right? So how do we do that? How do we do that?
Spend more money. But I think, let's take, because this is something that we've been thinking about deeply. All the global firms which have come in, there's 2-3 different ways of competition for us indigenous firms that are there. If you look at the global firms, most of them are not global because they bought out an Indian firm. So they're not really global, they just took out the brand. The other way of entering is to find a CEO of an Indian firm and hire them as the CEO of your firm and then set up your operation. So if you see, I'm not sure of how many global firms have come on their own and actually set up and been a success in India. So all those at the heart are still domestic, whether it's Genesis, whether it's Hanmer, whether it's, like, these are all, the processes were built here. And there was a layering of branding that went on top. But to break the clutter, I think one of the things that we must do is that we have the agility, because the firms that are global have come in with processes to provide a retention or a retainership type of service, right? And when you're looking for a functional requirement, I want to do media relations, I want to do PR, right? Honestly, at Ideosphere, we leave that to all the big agencies because that's what they're supposed to do. But when a firm says, I have this unique problem to solve, you'll see those same processes that global firms have serve as a challenge to them in solving that process, or solving that problem. Because their processes actually hinder that, because they cannot be flexible, nimble-footed, as Komal said, right? And I think that is what is very important for us. And for us to be able to break the clutter, we have to play to our strengths. Our strengths is that we can be flexible. Our strengths is that we can change and mold the business as per the market needs. Our strength is that we can really look at different skill sets coming into our company, because we don't have processes like you must do MBA in communications. I have no such processes. I want to get people who can articulate messages well and understand businesses. So I think that is the way to break the clutter, is to show our work. I would rather say that the problems that we solve are going to be our calling card. And that is what is going to happen. I think the other thing of collaboration, while we spoke about collaboration within the industry, cross-industry collaboration, of today bringing in technology to be able to help customers scale their communication, tying up with technology partners. We've had a couple of projects where we've actually tied up with large IT companies to build backends for communication for large companies and large ITS companies, weirdly. So that is where I think that's where we're going to break the clutter, is with the problem solving.
Fair enough. Komal, how are you doing that with Tute?
We might as well not be on the same panel. I have the same thoughts that you're saying, Aniruddha, from that point of view. So to add to that, I think one of the things that we're doing is process building. We realized that around 7 years back that you need to have your SOPs in place, but you don't have to drive the car, which highway, which signal you have to stop. You have to say, that's the end goal. How do we reach it through critical thinking? Right? So we put our SOPs in place. We also understood and spoke to a lot of people, what is the problem you're facing? Why is the younger talent so frustrated by the end of the day that they are just wanting to switch off? These are questions to ask. We realized very simple things. Documentation got to them. Filling out. So the joy of getting a story was immense, but the fact of documenting it and then putting it report by report, etc., sort of like inundated them. What did we do? We created a copyright model called the 49 touch point, which we've released and is now globally accepted. It's reduced your planning to almost 4 hours per plan. Just simple things. I mean, this could be the start of many things, many more hopefully to come by. But the idea was very simple. What's the problem? Look at the solve. Don't have a solve and fit the problem. I think that sort of a mindset is what clutter breaking agencies will do. Two, you don't need a month to change a font. Try asking a big agency that. I think I made my statement pretty clear here. We're very agile in thinking. So I think one of the biggest assets as a clutter breaking agency or an indigenous agency will be the fact of adaptability. You first get the problem and then look to solve it, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a PR problem. It's a communications problem. There could be multiple routes to take it. So I think with that mindset, we're moving 10 steps faster, not in terms necessarily of P&L, but in thinking, problem solving, and also getting your decision making to be decentralized. Empowering that person that take it, don't worry, it's in the deep end, we'll figure the float out because nobody has a right answer. Right? You figure the right answer when you implement it. So I think giving that a little bit of space is only going to attract better talent. And we have a lot of global firms approach us that they don't want to work with a network agency because it seems like a template. Glad to hear that, because that is the idea of the genesis of why we started Tute.
So Tejal, what are your thoughts on agility and how has that worked for you?
It's pretty much the same, but I think the good thing that we have is flexibility, adaptability. I think the most important thing in this era is to just leverage the data. It's extremely important. We all know that. Use like elements like humor, because these days humor really works. I mean, people really know, they look forward to campaigns that have that. And ideally, just with a mix of both, the beauty about again, boutique agencies is to just adapt to it very fast given the situation. And the more you adapt, the faster you communicate, the better it is. So yes, just to summarize, I think that's how the agencies can break clutter like us.
Girish, Rishi, same thoughts?
So, you know, when it comes to retention, my initial pitch to my first 2 employees was high purpose and low pay. And that sort of only worked for the first 2. After that, it was harder to get buy-in for that. But I think now as we've grown, I've realized we have a retention problem, I will admit that. But what works when we get it right with the individual, I think it's a combination of autonomy, a sense of sort of higher purpose in what we're doing, and a sense of belongingness, which maybe is our differentiator over some of the bigger networked firms.
Rishi?
Yes, thankfully, I think we've been very, very fortunate and probably an exception in the industry. We don't have a problem of attrition at all. Like people join us, they don't quit at all. So typically it's like 3 to 4 years minimum. And when they quit, they are either going to study abroad or, for reasons nothing to do with, finding a different role or salary is too low. But and to answer why I feel that is the case with us, I think what you said about larger firms being able to afford offsites or better salaries or better gifts. I think money plays a definite role in retention, no denying that, but there's so much more to a good employee sticking with an agency for a longer period. And there are so many different factors. Girish just mentioned autonomy, purpose, sense of belongingness, sense of freedom, flexibility, how your bosses or managers appreciate your work and what kind of learning and development you're getting at work. So multiple factors play into it. Salary, of course, you have to be competitive. Sometimes as a smaller firm, we have to be more than competitive. We have to offer a little more than what other firms are offering. But it's not just the salary which keeps people glued to an organization. You can really pay really a huge amount. And if your culture is not suited for the younger professionals. We see a lot of attrition. We don't see, but I hear a lot about Gen Z and the younger workers not sticking around. So I feel apart from the generational issues with attrition. I think, fundamentally, if you're able to build the right culture, and when I say culture, I just want to include all those 5 or 6 or 7 parameters, and then add the layer of good competitive salary. I think retention is not a big challenge, and so is finding good talent for us. Touch wood.
Fair. So I think culture is definitely a longer conversation for next time, Amit. Okay, so I think from that perspective, we've spoken about agility, generalists versus specialists. We've spoken about how we can break the clutter. Any thoughts from the audience? I think I'll just give this sort of open the floor and start with Sandeep is raising his hand. So any thoughts on how to break the clutter for Indian independent communication firms? Thank you, Sandeep.
Okay, so love the fact that Aniruddha brought up the fact that most network firms are actually firms that have taken over Indian firms, right? Straight to the question. So before that one point, I don't think too many people in this know, or rather, I think this is the only room where people will know of a name called Roger Pereira. Not too many others will, right? So question here, we're talking about breaking the clutter. We're all facing a variety of problems. How many of the smaller firms see the problems evolving, and more importantly, are we ready? Like Nandita spoke about scale. If we're not comfortable with the scale that we're at and we want to evolve further, how are we preparing for when we're at 60 people today, one source, 5 years. How are we preparing for, say, 120 people? How are we doing this across the board?
Okay, so I think it's one of the things is what is the lens of competition that you have? Am I competing with the largest company in this room? Okay, but or am I trying to be competing with the consulting firms which are leading global change today? Am I competing with the Accentures of the world? Am I competing with KPI? And by the way, Accenture also has a large communication department which they're building and things like that. So if you start going there, obviously those companies have scaled. And I look to them to see how have they scaled so beautifully in a consulting service model. We are talking about retention and attrition of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people. They're talking about thousands of people. They're doing something right. They have gotten the process right. They've gotten the people right. And these 3 elements of putting all of these 3 things together is something that I think we must look at. I think our aspiration must be much higher than being the #1 communications firm, because I think communication is becoming more core to business. We need to be able to evolve into consulting. I see in the future, and I'm not saying we are going to be that, but I see in the future that a originated communication firm is going to branch out and become a consulting firm. They're going to offer financial advisory, just like a lot of accounting firms have gone into multiple other consulting things. We are going to do that. There's going to be an agency which does that, and I think that's our aspiration. That's where we need to set our goals, and that's the scale we need to look at. So.
Sandeep, I like the fact that you mentioned about the question, right? That the evolving question. I think articulation is a big problem on the client side on what they really ask. That is it going to be a digital-led problem? Is it a sales supply problem? Is it a distribution problem? So to echo Aniruddha's thoughts, I think the skill set building and the process development is only going to help more and more companies like ours, which are very, very agile, to branch out into asking the right questions, hence pointing you either to a direction of a firm who will solve it or build capabilities in-house to partner or solve that. So I think that's really the future.
Instead of question, I think I'd just like to ask the one sort of Indian firm who has already sort of broken the clutter, is already there. Madan sir, how has your journey been and what are the thoughts? If you could just help. Sorry, it's me asking the question, not the audience. Chota sa chalega.
There are lots of interesting thoughts that the panel has already shared. But, it's like river navigation. You go around a bend and you see something new. And if you think it is interesting, it is scalable, both at the same time. I'm not into this fashion of I like this, I love this, I'm a very passionate thing about it. I'm in the business of business. Correct? So when I say something interesting, then how quickly can we build competence? How quickly can we build scale? Till you go to the next bend. And then you see a waterfall. You decide something else again. So you have to be walking all the time, and you've been seeing things, opportunities as they come, risks as they come. Both are at the same time. And how well you, it's not about only managing opportunity, how well you manage risks also is a very important thing. So it is a continuous process. It is not like one thing we decided and we go. What we did yesterday is no longer relevant tomorrow. What we are doing today may be very relevant tomorrow. So that agility, I think, is the way to build.
So, lage raho, keep building. I think someone said it in the last panel. So, I think that's the way to go. Thank you so much, Madan sir. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being a great panel and for the great discussion. And thank you, Amit. Thank you.